Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. You are listening to Author's Best Friend Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and I'm here today with my new bestie, Kat Summers. Kat, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Diet Dr. Pepper from Chick-fil-A.
Classic, very on brand for you.
Yes, Diet Dr. Pepper is my lifeblood.
And I am drinking a grapefruit Spindrift. So this is a PG podcast for the both of us.
Go team.
So Kat is the author of the Songbird series, which is a baseball romance series, and the author of the new release, Broken Chords, which released August 15th. How are you feeling post-release?
I'm really good. You know, you kind of always have that post-release slump, and I was really down to the wire. So, it was adrenaline rush, but I was actually in Chicago the weekend after release, so not as much pressure. Now I'm just kind of on to the next project while still promoting this one, so I'm feeling good, but booked and busy.
Is that usually how that works? Like you get the release out and then, because I feel like you would have such a hype, like right after the release that you would be you're feeling all of the love that you maybe didn't feel in the weeks that you're preparing when you're like, wow, this is taking everything and then some from me. But then you get it out and you get all the love and reviews and all those things.
Yeah, definitely. I usually have to take a week off from just anything writing related. Even reading, I don't think I read for a couple of days because I was like, I can't process. And you're in your DMs and all over social, so you have your break. But there's definitely a slump. You're kind of unless you have another project. That's what I learned. You're kind of a little depresso espresso unless you have something else to move forward with.
Yeah, that's fair. Is it similar to you said that you were a reader before you were a writer, and readers, you read a really good book, you get a really bad hangover. The better the book, the stronger the hangover afterwards. Do you get a little bit of that as a writer? It's kind of I was so invested in these character stories. With series, it's probably a little bit easier because you're kind of building off of the same sort of little friend group you already made. But does it kind of feel oh gosh, I'm kind of mourning those characters being done before I can think about something new?
Yes and no. It's like you said with the series, and especially because all of my series, at least in the Nashville universe I had planned, cross over. So there's lots of cameos. And, because you wrote your first draft so long ago, you're kind of tired of them. You have to read your own book so many times. I read Behind an Account at least 6 times. And I was like, I don't ever want to read about these people ever again.
Oh, no.
And then a year later, I'm like, oh, I miss them. So I think it's delayed. I think you're sick of them and ready for the new thing that you're currently working on because that's what you're energized by.
Mm-hmm.
And then a year later, you can appreciate them again.
Do you reread your own books?
Not once they're published, but I mean just through the editing process. You write it, then you read it while you draft it, and then I read mine while I'm line drafting, and then I read mine for any typos at the end, proofing your own stuff. So it's a lot of time reading your own book.
But after it's published and it's sitting on your bookshelf, you never have the urge to pick up your own book?
I haven't read the whole book, but I'll read to find a page that I want to focus on social, or try to find a good poll. I have someone doing a content poll right now, so I might start using someone else to do that. But I actually did have the urge just the other day. I was like, man, I miss Robbie and Karina. I kind of want to revisit their story because I
mean, nobody writes your own perfect book boyfriend like you.
Yeah. Miller is literally it's so funny. I have friends that hate him. And I'm like, that's fine. I just wrote the exact dream man, but that's cool.
That's fine, but we're married.
But when there's no, I mean, honestly, I'm okay, he's not for you. He's for me. He's mine. I don't care if you don't like him. That's my book husband. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're writing multiple books, you kind of have to spread the love out, right? You write maybe your first guy is your, end all be all, but then you have to there's going to be guys that you're I wouldn't really fall for this person, but there's little bits and pieces because you have to write different guys for different people each time.
Well, that's why Kent, my third guy, was so hard for me because he's kind of a playboy, life in just not my type at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a really long time to find his voice because I was writing him and I was I kind of hate him.
I must be doing this well.
I had to have people beta read and they're oh yeah, you're not making him very likable because you don't like him. And I'm that's fair. That's why beta readers are important.
Yeah, that's fair. I could definitely see how you're writing a character one way and then someone's oh, I don't like this thing about them. And you're like, oh, I kind of didn't realize I was making that a thing about them.
Yeah. Well, my conflicts are always way meaner when I start off with them in my head because I like to hurt my own feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I write kind of like rom-com-y books, I have to like really dial it back. I'm like, oh, my friends will be like, that's not really redeemable. And I'm like, got it.
I was stalking some of your Goodreads reviews just to kind of see what common things are standing out. And someone had said something like, I think it was for this book, for Broken Chords, something about like, I don't think they apologized enough for the, the conflict. I was like, she wanted more grovel. I was like, but what, where other people are like, oh, I loved that pain. Like, thank you for like breaking my heart and then putting it back together again. So I was like, I think I needed more groveling. It's like, well, everybody's threshold for what they could tolerate is very different.
That is what I've learned from reviews. Like, I'll get 2-3-star reviews and they'll be exact opposites. Like, one's like, I wish they had more of this. I wish they had more of that. That's why, for me, I'm just like, I don't care what the number is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people's 3 and some people's 5.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just wish it was recommend, don't recommend.
Huh.
Because, again, I'll have someone be like, this book's fantastic. It's like the best book I've read so far this year, and it'll be 4 stars. And I'm like, what are we doing? Or they'll be like, this book was okay. I don't think I reread. Again, 4 stars. And I'm like, I mean, I appreciate the 4 stars, but like, I don't know. What's your criteria? If you wouldn't read it again, it's a 4-star, like what's a 2?
Yeah. That's so interesting because there are also like books that get really big that you kind of need to read so that you know what the heck is going on, but aren't that great. Like, okay, maybe super unpopular opinion, but I read, what's that book called? 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the idea was interesting and it was kind of cool, but I don't think I'd read it again, or I wouldn't be able to tell anyone like, oh my gosh, you have to read this book. Like, it changed me. But like, it's a big pop culture book and you kind of need to read it. Yeah. So you like know what the heck everybody's talking about. So yeah, there is such a difference of like, read this so you read it because there's something in it that you could get from it, or read it because it's really good. And also just having other girlfriends who read, like their recommendations are not my recommendation. Like, oh my God, you have to read this book. It will kill you. And I read it and I'm like,
yeah. That's how I feel about Pen Pal. Like, I think everyone should read it because, have you read it? Oh my gosh, it's like a ride. Like, I'll never read it again. But like the ride. I literally read it and then I like Amazoned it to one of my friends because I didn't have anyone that read it. I was like, I need to talk to someone about what just happened to me.
Okay, writing that down.
It's a roller coaster ride full of twists that like you won't see coming, and then it's like you leave it and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Oh, that's fun.
Enthralling. I also like thought it was a straight up romance when I went into it. I didn't realize it was like romantic suspense, and then I was like, this was a ride I was not prepared for.
Wait, I love that. Okay. I'm getting such big deja vu right now. I swear I have the title Pen Pal written somewhere else. Maybe you're not the first person to tell me about this. It was like
super book talk big like 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, I'm always way behind. I'm like years behind.
Because I just remember because I read it when I was in town for my friend's baby shower, and her son is about to turn 2. I like read it while I was staying with her.
You're like, I don't mean to overshadow your baby shower, but this book is changing my life.
Yeah, it fucked me up.
Amazing. Okay, well, that's on my immediate read. I'm reading your book, and I'm doing some editing things, but I have nothing else on my passion list, so.
Oh, you'll get sucked in. It's definitely a passion.
Okay, well, unfortunately for you, because you're the person that recommended it to me, I will be sending you my live updates.
Go for it. I love it.
You'll have to relive it all over again. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Broken Chords, because my intuition is that you're a sports girly, and so it makes sense to me that you wrote, a baseball series. But then you wrote a hockey novella.
I'm actually not that much of a sports girl. I mean, I am in the sense that I like know sports. I like sports, but like I'm not like the girl that I didn't play sports. I was like the number one fan, but like didn't go. I have 2 brothers. My dad was like a recreation director growing up, so I've just like always been around them. I think I just like the convention of them for writing, and I do love baseball, and I just noticed there were a lot of baseball books, and so I was like, cool, like let's bring it in. And I live in the South, and baseball is really big, and it also goes throughout like most of the year, so I was like, we're gonna bring baseball in. I had a bunch of series ideas all at the same time, and I just kind of picked Nashville for their location since I'm in Tennessee, and they kind of flowed there. So I wrote the 3 baseball books, and then I was like, well, I don't want to be pegged as just a sports author. So that's when I was like, I'm not going to write the whole series and then just switch it up on people. Like, surprise, now I'm writing music, rock stars. So I'm trying to like alternate enough that it's like, you don't know what you're going to get. But I love my sports boys for sure.
All right, I see. So we're jazzing it up so that we don't get labeled as that, you know, you're only writing about sports. You have you have a broader knowledge about occupations, hot boyfriend jobs than just sports. But where did this particular idea come from for this like boy band group?
Well, the first piece of inspiration, I don't know if you've seen this, is there's a video of Nick Jonas and his wife doing an interview, and they finish writing something, and then he like pulls her chair over to like be beside him.
Cute.
It's cute and hot. And I was like, oh, is Nick Jonas a dom? Is that what we're doing? Is he daddy? And so that kind of started it. So the series is like, they're loosely based on the Jonas Brothers, but country. That's kind of how I describe it. And then they have an extra sibling thrown in.
Is Jack Joe?
Jack is Joe.
Oh my gosh, okay, because he's got, you know, the Tom Selleck mustache. And Joe was my favorite. Like, I had his, like, what are those magazines called? The Teen Bop ones?
Yeah,
like I had his poster on my wall.
J14 and Teen People.
Oh,
yeah, there's a couple of, I know you mentioned you're not a big Swiftie, but there's like a mention in the beginning about him breaking up with a pop star on the phone.
Are you trying to get me murdered, Kat? I said that in confidence.
I said not a big Swiftie, not that you weren't a Swiftie.
Swifties have to have a certain level of knowledge, I think.
No, you
and
do.
I just don't have that certain level of knowledge.
In the beginning of the book, there's a reference to how Jack broke up with a pop star in a voicemail. And that's a reference to Joe breaking up with Taylor Swift over a voicemail.
Oh my, yeah, right over my head.
So
wow. I love that. Wow, that's amazing. When I was stalking the Goodreads, I did see somebody was like, this is like the Joe Jonas, you know, like retelling that I needed or whatever, but country-wise.
Yeah, I was nervous because when I was writing it was right when his divorce with Sophia Turner was happening. And I was like, don't ruin this for me, Joe. I don't know what you're doing out there. Don't ruin it.
I know. That was hard for all of us.
I know. I think that's kind of why I changed him so much physically, was because I was like, all right. And mustaches are huge in country music right now. And baseball. Mustaches are they're having their moment.
Yeah, I haven't seen a good mustache in like any of the romance books I've read thus far.
Yeah, they've been popping off in baseball for like the last year plus. And then, yeah, the country singers are getting in on it. And now it's just slowly trickling into the mainstream.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. But yeah, I even before now where I'm piecing this together that you were sort of modeling it after them, I was really excited to see this reference because I feel like a lot of people writing now are like early 20s and their heartthrobs are different than my heartthrobs. And not only are there just their vibe is different, but also like the references in the books are just like a lot of Taylor Swift things that I just don't really catch on to unless it's like unless they're like, and then, mainstream. You know, I remember it all too well. And I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I know that one. But your references, I could actually get, which was nice. Which, you know, for those of you out there who are like, who the heck is Tom Selleck? Google him. He's a man with a great mustache.
Google a young Tom Selleck. That's what you need.
Yeah, he's a hottie.
Yeah, I love a good reference. And I love, what's hard for me in the same vein of what you just said is when I'm like casting people in my brain, I am 25 on the inside. And so I'll cast someone like the guy in my current work in progress. And then I'll Google the actor and he's like 42. And I'm like, oh.
Whoops.
I'm like, but in my book, he's 27. And I'm like, okay. So then I have to like find these younger people. But I'm like, this is a baby.
Yeah, it's like this
is a child.
It's
this
like
is illegal.
Tom Holland type or like Timothée Chalamet. But I'm like, but my picture, like they can't grow good mustaches from my understanding, from what I've seen. And so if I need a guy with a good mustache, he's actually got to be like 35.
Yeah, the guy that this character is based off of is 35, like 10 years older almost than the character. Like,
yeah.
Well, sorry.
I mean, it checks out because like at that time, you know, you're usually like 13 and the guys you're crushing on are like 18.
Exactly.
So
Well, because like the people who you had crushes on, like you still see as in high school. Like I don't like to watch shows, and my husband gets mad at me, but shows where people are in high school. Like I didn't watch 13 Reasons Why. I can't get into like Euphoria because I'm like, they're so young. But I could watch Gossip Girl because they were older than me when I was in high school. So like they just feel older than me, even though they're like 10 years younger than me now. They feel old.
Yeah. And like modern day, this is going to make me sound so old, but like modern day shows about high schoolers makes me feel like, I don't know. I have a very typical high school experience, but I'm like, oh my, like clutching my pearls. Like, is this how things are these days at school? Like, it's just so.
Oh yeah,
they're so wild. I'm almost kind of like looking between my, like, I'm not old enough to watch this show. These people are 16 years old. Like, this is a little much, and it's easier for me to watch shows like, you know, like Gossip Girl, because I mean, I guess I dabbled in Degrassi a little bit, and that show is also really wild. But I was watching that. And so I'm seeing them as like they're my age now, but it's like you're watching it when they were younger. But to watch actually people that are young like that now and I'm older than them, I'm like, oh.
Yes, I too learned a lot from Degrassi. Well, it's like when I saw Pretty Little Liars, I was like, one parent intervention in this whole show falls to the ground. Like there's not a single adult in any of these places. And now I'm like about to rewatch Gilmore Girls, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the same age as Lorelai, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow when all of the current like heartthrobs in pop culture are younger than you.
Yeah, that's the problem thing as sports girly too. All these players, I'm a Memphis Grizzlies fan, and there's not one player on the team who is older than me.
Rip. But baseball guys, they play for a long time.
Baseball can play older.
Yeah.
Baseball can play older. That is a true blessing of the.
That's kind of like maybe in golf. Those are like kind of the only sports where like I talked about this before. I don't think you can make golf that hot actually. So maybe there aren't that.
Have you read Fangirl Down?
No.
It's good.
You're joking. There's actually a good spicy golf book?
Yeah, it's Tessa Bailey.
Oh.
And he's grumpy, and Tessa Bailey writes the perfect grumps.
Are there
no one writes a grump like Tessa.
But is his job like a big part of the book? Like, are there like intense golf scenes?
She becomes his caddy.
Oh, that's cute.
And he's only golfing to like help make money for her because she won't accept money from him. So she's like, fine, you can be my caddy. And then they fall in love. And it's adorable. So I just reread it or re-listened to it like last week. So big fan.
Wow. Okay. Well, you heard it here, folks. I'm being told that there actually is a hot golf book. Okay. But yeah, like football players, you know, your body can only take so much for so long. And
yes,
basketball probably the same way.
When basketball is just a young man's game, because like you gotta be fast.
Yeah, those lungs are for the young folks.
Those knees.
Yeah, the knees too, especially because you're like, you know, you're like
jumping,
you're
running,
like 6'7". You're basically have the body of an 80-year-old by the time you're 30.
Yeah, which is a shame for me because the more impossibly tall you are, the more attracted I am to you. So
yeah, that's sad.
Like I don't like regular like 6'2", okay, 7'2", insane. Like I don't care how tall you are unless you're like insanely tall, and then I'm super interested.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Do you have like, are your guys particularly tall?
No, because baseball players aren't that tall. Miller's kind of tall. Pitcher's gonna be kind of tall, but like I actually had for Leo, I wanted him to be like JJ Watt. But then my husband was like, catchers are small. I was like, dang it, you're right. Because they have to squat and be a little, like the smaller you are as a catcher, the better it is.
Yeah.
So no, they're just like, I mean, they're like 6'2". Miller, I think, is 6'4".
What about your rider boys?
No, they're not super tall. And that's where I pigeonhole myself with the Jonas Brothers. There's some short kings. And so I think I probably made Jack probably like 6 foot. But, you know, both my brothers are 6'4" and 6'5". So like I'm just used to being around tall people. And I'm only 5'4". So.
Oh, so just like reaching up on a shelf and you're like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah. And my husband's 6'2". So I'm like, yeah, tall is where I'm used to being the short one. So
what about Ellie? So I thought it was interesting how she's graduating college and she doesn't really know what she wants to do yet, which I think is a situation a lot of people find themselves in after they graduate. And I thought it was interesting that that's the path she takes to get to be near Jack. Like she gets offered a job to work with the band. And And I was curious about why you chose, like, rather than having like that be her career path and they're like, hey, to help you get started, you can come work with us, have an internship, whatever. Like, I'm curious about, and again, I'm only like 20% of the way of the book, so I'm sure that there's some character arc happening at the end, but I'm curious why that was her path versus, you know, like, this is more intentional.
So I think for me, it was kind of just like you're saying, like, we all kind of have that feeling when you, like, there are some people who like go to school and they know what they want to do with their lives. That wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always did stay in like my field, but I freelanced for a while, which kind of felt like a reprieve from like the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of wanted Ellie to have that. I did that while I was in grad school because I too was like, I'm good at school, so I'm just gonna go back to school and get that academic validation.
Mm-hmm.
But really it was, honestly, Jack and Ellie are the couple that had the least formulation. So like I said, the Nick character came first, and then the Lainey character, and then the Grayson character. So it was kind of like Jack and Ellie are kind of the ugly stepchildren of the series. They were the ones I was the least excited to write. Like, I fell in love with them while I was writing their story, but they're kind of just like the vehicle for the series to start. But it's just, as far as her, you know, everyone loves a close proximity, forced proximity. And I just had this idea of like, how is Lainey not there? And so that's just kind of how it came about. Because if they're both just in Nashville, like, they're never going to see each other. Like, it's hard to...
Right.
And especially because I knew I wanted her to have to go into fashion in a specific way. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Although, if you had read the third Songbirds book, she's in the book, This Is the Past of that book.
Oh, okay,
so
gotcha.
You would know what she's doing. But anyway, like, that was her path. So I tried to figure out the middle part because I had already written her, like, future.
Okay, so then it's not all of the brothers getting a book. Sis is getting one too?
Yes.
Okay.
Lainey is getting a book too. The other three brothers, maybe their cousin Rhett, who's like barely mentioned, but his book would be a spinoff, so he may have to wait a while because his is super angsty, and I'm just not sure I'm ready for that.
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain time of life to write something like that. Although you did mention you're doing a Gilmore Girls rewatch, which is classic fall. I love it. I feel like this is the time of year where those dark feelings start to emerge, where I'm just like, I'm so freaking overwhelmed. Like, maybe I want to read a Colleen Hoover book. Maybe I really just want to feel really dark feelings.
Yeah, I'm an ultimate mood reader. Like, I'll literally group chat my friends, be like, I need a book that's going to hurt my feelings today.
Yeah.
That's what I'm after. Like, take a knife to my heart. It's fine.
Find the one with all the trigger warnings and then give me that one. I want to be triggered in every way possible.
Well, that's the thing, though. I can't get super dark or like too much bullying. I know people hate a miscommunication, but like that's what I need. I like a subliminally terrible miscommunication.
Yeah.
And then he has to grovel for several chapters to make up for his stupidity.
Yeah, that's a hard balance for authors to write a scene that's going to hurt them enough to be like, oh yeah, don't talk to him, he sucks, but then also feel like when he's groveling, like, oh my God, girl, you got to take him back. Like, that is everything. That's a hard balance.
It is. And that was the struggle with my first book too, because Behind in the Count is, I thought of it's going to have a prequel, but I thought of the prequel first. And so I decided that people would rather like go backwards than like know that their favorite couple broke up.
Oh, that's fun.
So when I initially wrote the book, I had the first breakup, and my friends were like, they would not get back together. So I had to like tone down the initial breakup so that they would make sense that they would still get back together in this book.
Yeah. But you felt like this was fine? Like, oh no, I could see them getting back together. Or even in your reread, you're like, oh yeah, you're right.
No, I think it makes sense. So, because they break up after he gets drafted. And so he's just kind of like, you know, a punk guy.
Yeah.
Who's like balancing being on draft for the first time with a girlfriend who's still in college and like wanting to put us all in. So it makes sense for the characters. I mean, you'll probably be bummed when you read it because you'll be like the prequel. So like, man, I can't believe he sucked later. But it's like, it's not necessarily that he sucked. It's just that like, you have to remember that he's a 22-year-old man, and 22-year-old men are normally dumb.
Yeah. And you throw them into fame and they'll be extra dumb.
Yeah. Especially like the minor league, because it's not like you get drafted in the NFL and you're like on a team.
Yeah.
It's like you got to play in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, until they decide you're good enough to go to middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and then they'll pull you up Like, you got to put in your dues more than any other sport.
And is that like a highlight in like, I feel like in some sports books, it's kind of like, this sport's just hot. Baseball pants are hot. So like, here's some hot stuff. Whereas others, this is why I kind of said maybe about a sports story, because you actually have some knowledge about how like trades work and, you know, signing with teams and actually, you know, playing on a professional team. Like, do you work to try to integrate the like realism of that into the storyline?
Yes. And I do a little bit of sports. I definitely don't write as much gameplay as a lot of people. I mean, most of Backcheck Heart takes place preseason. Takes place in the summer. But especially for Behind in the Count, because the premise is that he is injured and he's playing down in the minor leagues, and that's why they run into each other.
Gotcha.
And he's coaching her softball team. So like sports had to be in that more, because that was what is forcing them together, is that a softball league. But like scoring position doesn't really have that much. It's more locker room than it is gameplay.
Well, hey, locker room works. That hits.
Yeah. Well, because I am really character driven. Like, I want to show the relationships, especially because I have these series. Like, it's really all about how they connect as couples, but also with the other people in the series. And like seeing their friendship and setting up for future books, because you have to meet the characters.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you feel like it's easier to do that with more dialogue? Like, locker room makes me think more chatting, more dialogue, whereas gameplay is more like description of how the team is playing together and the actual event that's happening. Do you feel like it's easier to form the relationships between the characters for multi-book series when you have more dialogue than like internal or descriptive?
Yes, I think dialogue for sure for relationships, but as far as like overlapping timelines, that's where the other stuff comes in. Like noticing that someone's playing off, noticing that someone's having this reaction, or someone not being somewhere. That helps set up the books, but doesn't really introduce you to the characters as much. Because I want you to like the characters enough to like want to read. Like, I have people, Tiffany is one of the girls in the Songbirds book, and they're like, when is Tiffany getting her book? Like, I want Tiffany. She's like the fun Barbie like party princess, and they're like, but she's like sassy and diehard. Like, we want her. So like, I love when people love a side character.
Yeah. Have you ever been guilted into writing a book just based on people demanding a side character story?
I say no, but that's because I have like 100 book ideas. So basically, any character I encounter, I have an idea of a side story for them. It's just whether or not I'm writing it. Like right now, I'm working on a holiday novella with 3 other authors, and there's like a side character who's in all our stories. And I was like, is anyone using him for a future book? Because I have an idea. I can't turn off the side character storylines. It's a real problem. And then I get myself in a pickle. Like for Backcheck Heart, it's the sister of the guy from Behind in the Count. But I named her husband Ralphie. And then I was like, I'm going to write a hockey novella. And I was stuck with a guy named Ralphie.
Oh, no.
I was like, how do I make this work?
Yeah. You got to give him a hot nickname, because Ralphie's not.
Well, I made Ralphie the nickname.
Okay.
Because
there you go.
They call him that because he's like Wreck-It Ralph. And he like busts through people. But it took a long time to figure out. I was like, how do I make, because Ralphie doesn't pass the moan test. So I was like, how do I make this work? And she does not say his name at any point during spicy scenes. So
I'm so dead. Doesn't pass the moan test.
Have you ever heard of the moan test?
Never heard
Oh, look it up. Yeah, it's like a thing the authors think about. Like, that's why there's so many like weird like names, and that's why they're so reused, because it's like, is this name hot enough to pass the moan test?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of like Nicks or Wills.
Damien.
Yeah.
And you get like the obscure ones.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Ralphie doesn't pass the moan test.
It doesn't. Ralphie was... That's why I'm really careful now when I name side characters, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen.
I'll never know.
I'm ready if it does.
I'm ready if it does.
I did have people who wanted... there's a guy in the Songbirds who's like the asshole player on the team. His name is Derek Jones. And people were like, is Derek going to get a redemption story? And I'm like, no. He's the villain of the entire series.
Derek is an asshole and stays an asshole. That's...
Yes.
Whatever that test is, that's the name that does it.
Yeah, in every book, he's been called Derek fucking Jones at least once. Like, he's not He messes up everything for everybody. He's creepy to the girls. Like, he doesn't get a story. I'm not subjecting.
Oh, he even has creepy vibes and they still want redemption?
Yeah. People like a villain.
Yeah. Girls love their morally gray.
What? And they're like, you know, he could turn around. I'm like, listen, there's already 8 books in the series. He's fine.
He is who he is. There will be no...
He doesn't need a story. He'll get over it.
So how has that's the novella you're talking about, that's the Sugar Peak Resort series? How has that been? I actually just learned about this recently, about this like novella collab thing where people each take characters and different sort of storyline and each publish one, which I think is very cool. Is this your first time doing that?
Yes. This is my first time doing it. It's super exciting. And this probably will come up later, but I am an outliner supreme. Mm-hmm. I outline every detail. It's why I have so many side stories, because like everything is outlined. My co-writers are not. Mm-hmm. And so that's been difficult, because I'm like, the other day someone was like, we should put a timeline. And I was like, yeah, we should. I said we should do that like 4 months ago. But then I'm like, here's a detailed timeline of everything that's happening in my book.
You should mention, I have something you could use as an example.
And where it fits. Well, and to give context, so it's set at a ski resort. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's all during the holidays, so they'll overlap. And my girl is the event planner.
Mm-hmm. Cute.
For the ski resort. So like literally there are events, and I'm like, here's when all the events are in the story. So if you want to have it, like, you don't have to use it, but like on this day, they're having a cookie baking contest. On this day.
It makes the series feel more cohesive that way.
Yes. So that's been really fun and challenging, but I like it because it's like a lot of coordination, having to learn each other's characters. Mm-hmm. But then our stories are also like so our own, and we all have different voices, and we all have different like backgrounds and vibes. So I'm interested to see how they all read together, because we're all baiting for each other. So I'm interested to see how it's all gonna feel.
Okay, so do you guys like meet regularly to talk about things, or is it just like, hey, we got our ideas, check back in a month when it's written or whatever?
We've had a couple of Zoom calls, and we're making them more frequent now. 2 of the girls have releases this month.
Oh, okay.
So once they get past that, one's tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And then one's at the end of the month. So once we get past that, I think we'll be more gung-ho on moving things forward.
Mm-hmm. And what's your male main character in the series? What does he do?
He's the handyman.
Oh, see, folks, she's really branching out. It's not just sports.
I know, blue collar.
It's artist and blue
really
collar.
And Canadian.
Wow, yeah, you really are branching out.
But again, with my connections, the girl in this book is in the short story I wrote last year, which is going to be a full-length novel next year. So she is still connected to the bunch.
Oh my gosh. Fans of yours need like notebooks so they can like keep track of all of these lines that connect.
One day I'll have a graphic of like all the webs I weave. It's Megan Quinn is one of my favorite authors, and she does that. And so I was like, I'm going to make all these connect.
That's very fun, and fun for the reader too, and you can pick up on those things. How did this even happen? How did you get to this point where you're writing down all of these stories? It seems like you were born to do this, but I'm guessing this was not your first path.
So I work in marketing, and I'd always liked writing. And so for a while, I got a lot of my creative energy out through work, but then I started working for like a really technical role. And so I didn't get all my work out. And so I was like, I'm going to start a blog. And so I started a blog because I loved writing. And that was fun, but I didn't particularly like the influencer part of it.
What did you talk about on your blog?
It's just a lifestyle blog. So it was like recipes and travel tips and like skincare and like just whatever. It was really just like things I wanted. Like if I Googled it and I was like, oh, I'll just write about this. Like every year I would go to Bath and Body Works and smell all the fall candles and tell you which candle was the best one.
Love that.
And then once I really started wedding planning, that kind of fell off, and I didn't pick it back up. And my honeymoon, I started reading again. And I was like the AR kid in like elementary school, middle school. Like I read all the time, and then just like kind of dropped off high school, college, post-college.
Yeah.
And then I started reading again a couple years ago, and I got laid off during COVID, and I read like 400 something books in 1 year.
Oh,
and so
my gosh.
I was like, I think I could write. And I'd always wanted to write a book, but I always thought it would be kind of like a self-development style book, because I loved reading those. And then I found romance and I was like, I could write this. And
in a way, it's like self-development.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I'd always put myself to sleep telling myself stories. And I didn't realize this was a thing that everyone didn't do until I saw a girl on TikTok saying she did it. And everyone was like, oh my God, that's wild. And I was like, we don't all tell ourselves stories in our heads to go to sleep. And so that's where a lot of my like original stories ideas have come from. So it's been like a story that I've told myself in my head to put myself to sleep, which is why they're always meaner. And then I dialed them back and make a story about it. And then I just kind of like connected the dots. So like, especially the first book, it was like loosely based on like a what if I'd gone to one of the colleges that I ended up not applying to. And then this guy I knew had also gone to that college. Like, what could have happened if those people? And then it just like spiraled from there.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, gotcha. So you were in marketing. So that makes what I would, in my personal opinion, think that would be the hardest part about being an author is like the advertising and marketing yourself after, or your book after you've written it. So that stuff all came pretty natural, I'm guessing, since that's sort of like what your training is in.
It's both easier and harder. It's easier in that I like know the systems, I know the backgrounds. It's harder because I do for corporations, but then it's also really hard to want to get help. Like it's so hard to like use someone else. Like I had someone helping with my TikTok for a little while, and it's so hard to just justify because it's like I know how to do it.
Yeah,
but
it's just so time.
I know how to make graphics. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like having to like figure out what I want to spend my time on, and that's what some of my author friends were like. You only have so many hours.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, but I know how to make like the matches graphic. I was like, I know how to make that graphic.
Yeah,
like I don't want to pay. So that's where it's harder. But it is easier for me, I think, than some people just because, like, technology can be hard.
Yeah.
And so I already know the algorithm. I already know reading statistics and KPIs and, like, understanding what works. But also the book marketing world was hard. It's very fickle. And especially because I wasn't really a part of it until I started writing. Because even when I was reading, like, I would get book talk, but I didn't, like, have a book talk. Like I was just, and I mainly read like indie KU romance.
Yeah.
So I was like not in that world of like the dark romance or like fantasy. And so having to like remember that not everyone reads the way I read. Like not everyone's reading 300 books a year. Yeah. Not everyone like writes. So like it's just hard to remember. Like I'm not the prototype.
But you also like pop culture. And I feel like that's like step 1 through 5 of being able to be successful in this is like what's the kind of thing that's going to give somebody a giggle or like get them to.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing for me, I think, on social. It's just showing up. It's just being there. It's like capitalizing on trends when you can. But really it's about connecting to readers. And if you're just the kind of author, no hate, no shade, but if you're just kind of author just going to post something and then leave, like you got to interact. You got to, like I still am posting like, this is what I read this month and tagging other authors. And I'm actually about to stop doing that because I realized I'm stressing myself out because I'm like, well, I told them I'd read their book. And if it's not on my end of the month, like recap. So I'm going to start doing it in stories instead of in my feed. But like, you know, you just got to be in the mix. And that's, I think, the hardest part of marketing is like, showing up because you can make pretty stuff all day, but if it's not what people are interested in, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, and you also have like stuff to write as well, like
yeah.
Especially when you have multiple books and you're like, okay, maybe I should show that book that I published like a year ago some love. And
well, see, I love a content calendar, so like that part's like the planning is easy. I'm a much better planner than executor. Like I can have a color coded schedule all day long. It's just then I got to do it.
For the folks listening who that's their least favorite part, what do you use to like as your content planner? Like what do you use to line out of that?
For my content calendar, I just use Google Calendar. And each series has its own calendar. And then I put like the code that I use for each book on the calendar. So like BRK.
Like the hex code or the abbreviation of the book?
Just I have abbreviations from books. So like Broken Chords is BRK. So I'm like BRK, this. BITC, this. And then it's just all pretty and color coded because I try to balance like, okay, well, you know, you want to promote your work in progress this many times, but like your last book this many times and then your older books. It's all about a mix of like, because the thing too is like people are new every time they come to your page or every time they see your posts. Like they weren't here last year when I was only promoting behind an account because I only had behind an account. So like there's new information for them.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed, like when I have podcast guests, like when we first started, we got a lot of requests from people that I didn't really know very well. And so I was, stalking their page. Their like about me is very far. And so I'm like, I want to know, like, I usually know where they're at because I ask people what time zone they're in when we do the podcast. But I want to know a little bit about you so that I don't have to just talk about your book the whole time. We can also talk a little bit about, who you are. And so I know that, going in that you're a teacher or a parent or whatever. And so it's nice, like you at least have a refresher, like, hey, if you're new here, here's this thing. And that's where I saw you like Diet Dr. Pepper. But also then like it's hard to tell like where we're at with books. Like I found it like it's great that people like, promote old books. You should definitely do that. But like it feels like sometimes I had a hard time figuring out what the order of like releases go in. So I'm like, okay, so are they like, did they start out in this genre and now they're kind of moving towards something else? Or like, was their very first book actually this 3-book series? Or was there a book before here? Like, it can be kind of difficult to like find people's trajectory, which I think is useful, not just for the podcast host, but for the reader, because in some ways you want to read books and like, it could be kind of jarring if you find an author that with a new release, you read the book and you go, oh my gosh, I love this. And then you go back to their very first written book and they're still trying to find their voice, or like maybe it's a little bit different than what the new book is. And so then it's just kind of like, it's good to know that going in, like, okay, this is where they started, where you might be expecting that it's going to be similar writing or tone or whatever to the book you just read. And so it's nice when they have like a website that you can go to in their bio and kind of follow that suit. But with Instagram, especially with people who have, like, I've had podcast guests who have had like 15 books released, and I'm like, where are we? I don't know where to start.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way too, because especially before I was writing, like if I had an author I like, I'm like the kind of person who's going to read like all of it. And so like I need to know what's next. Or even if I see a book I like, I might start at book 1 and then I'm like, have to wait till I get to book 4, but I read really fast. So like I'll get there in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like Amazon, I can't tell you how many people's like author page I go to and I'm like, sort by publication date.
Yeah.
Or even like authors I like I love Megan Quinn, and I'll go to her page and be like, how many books do you put out a year?
Yeah.
I need to understand this process.
Yeah, the worst is when you find someone you like and you blaze through all their old work and then you're just sitting there like, tapping your feet like, okay, when are you going to give me more?
Yes, that's the worst.
And I feel like the bigger they get, the longer it takes. Like now they're working with a, like an editor and a publishing company, and they have longer timelines. Yeah,
especially when they switch to trad. That's one of the things I like about indie, though. It's like, there's an author I really like named Jillian West, and I swear every time I'll read a book, and then she like announces the next one, and I'm like, yes.
She's like, it'll actually be here in 3 weeks.
Yay! Keep pumping them out that fast.
And then the writing process was like fairly. I mean, you said you're very good at outlines. I think that's one of the early signs of success is if you could do a decent outline. It's not. You'll be able to stay on track. You'll do okay. Like, you might be coming up against your deadline, but at least you won't be lost in your plot. You won't just be like, on chapter 20, like, what the heck is happening? But did you find that process to be like, I don't want to say easy, but like uncomplicated?
It's really dependent on the book. So the first book was super easy, I think, because I've been thinking about it for so long. And so I wrote behind an account in a month. I was like, I'm going to give myself a month to write a book.
Wow.
And then they've progressively gotten slower. The novella was actually the hardest to write because I like my characters to have some depth. It was like, how do I put this in literally half the amount of words? Like, and then people are like, I wish it was longer. And I'm like, me too. Then it wouldn't be a novella and we wouldn't be here. And then Broken Chords was actually really hard for me. And I think because, like I said earlier, like they weren't like the characters I was most excited about. So I had a hard time writing their conflict. I actually changed their like grovel, like between beta.
Oh, okay.
But for me, it's character driven. So if I'm like really into the characters and really into the conflict and I'm like excited to get there, the middle is the hardest part for me. I know it's some people's favorites, but for me, I'm just like, oh my God, I get it. We're in love. Like, let's get to the drama. And then I can like speed through to the end. But it's like that middle 30% where I'm like, okay, roll it on out, guys.
Yeah. I mean, if I haven't written a book, but I read a lot and I talk to authors, and so I do have ideas that float around in my mind. And like the falling in love part is the stuff that stands out the most, and then how you're going to rip them apart, and then how you're going to sort of end everything. And like I talk to, like, Sierra writes books sometimes and she doesn't know what her ending's going to be. She's like, I'll figure it out when I get there. But I'm like, that I feel like I need to know my start and end point, and I'll have those solidified. And then it's stuff in the middle. I'm like, I don't know where they're going to go or what they're going to do or how any of this is going to work. But
yeah, so when I say I outline a lot, I mean like each chapter has a synopsis. So like I know exactly I know exactly what's happening, and like notes with like a dialogue line or so like when it comes to time to write the book, so I spend a lot more time outlining than a lot of people, but like when it comes like right now, you could say what's happening in chapter 13 and I could like tell you what's going to happen in chapter 13. Now things change. Sometimes I add new characters, sometimes I change the conflicts, but like by and large, like when it's actually time to put words on paper, like that can go pretty, that's why I can write a book so quickly, because like I already have it. And my outlines are like 14 pages.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure future Kat loves you for that.
Well, because I had like a whole page on each character and like the random things that they like or dislike, and then like pages on how they interact. And then I start off with like a paragraph with like one sentence for each act. And then like each sentence gets a paragraph, and then each paragraph gets a page. And then by the time I have like a essay on the book. So it's like
a typical A+ AR student.
It's a whole process. But then the writing part, editing, I think is honestly harder for me than writing, just because one, I learned something new, but I didn't know about the English language every time. I will say I learned from my mistakes. So like every time my editor comes back with some error that I've made multiple times, and I'm like, did I just not know that? Like for the first book, every time I started a sentence with but, I put a comma. But I did it every single time. So like clearly that's what I thought was correct. It wasn't like it was a typo, but it wasn't like a typo. It was like, oh, this is just what you think is right.
Yeah. In some ways, I think like you can violate some grammatical rules based on the character. Like maybe your character always just kind of pauses after their butts.
Yeah. Any like word editing tool does not like it when you have incomplete sentences. But like we don't think in complete sentences. So sometimes it's just like, oh, if that's the sentence. Like, sorry.
Yeah. Please, Grammarly, please stop telling me that I need a comma here. It's a run-on because my character is frantic.
This is a stream of consciousness situation. Like, but no, I really like the whole writing process just because I like, and coming from the blogging world, it was hard because like you write a blog post, you publish a blog post, you share the Instagram, you get the instant gratification. So it was really hard to transition to like put in months of work and then the gratification comes at the end. So slowly I'm getting better at that process, and having other books out helps because you're getting the gratification elsewhere. But I honestly find myself just more excited to tackle the next books. Like the stories, I'm so excited for Lainey's book, and it's not next. So we have to go through Grayson and Declan first, and then we get to Lainey because all their storylines overlap time-wise. So.
Well, I guess you'll just have to suffer through writing another love story before you can get to the one you want.
I mean, I'm excited about Declan, too, because it's Nick Jonas with daddy vibes, so.
Yeah, Declan's the quiet one, right? That's what I'm gathering, yeah.
But if you had read Stepping Up to the Plate, which you haven't, but not a spoiler, he co-owns a sex club with that character.
You're kidding.
No. So when I say, like, daddy dom vibes, it's like he literally owns a sex club.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. My image of him is shaping.
Oh, no.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Is that like teased in this book? Do we get a sense of those vibes in Broken Chords?
I hope so. I mean, that's the other challenge is like when you have future story plan, it's like writing the characters in ways that are going to be true to like your future plans. So he's like very quiet and stoic, but like the protective problem solver, which I think comes through in later parts of the book. I'm excited to hear what you think of the end.
Yeah. I mean, we're still in summer. School doesn't start till the end of this month. And so I've got nothing but time, girl. So you will be getting live reactions from me.
It's hard not to spoil it for you.
Yeah. And I'm a big, like, I don't read book synopses.
Okay.
I don't read back covers. I don't really read blurbs. Like I kind of just like to go into them. I don't really like to read trigger warnings. I just throw it at me and I'll experience it in real time.
This one didn't have any trigger warnings. The trigger warnings are tricky for me because it's hard to know what needs one a lot of the times, especially because I don't write dark stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, does parental drug abuse need a trigger warning? Does like an off-page parent death that happened 2 years ago, but as reference need a trigger warning. So like in the Songbird series, spoiler if you haven't read it, but like, well, not really, but in the second book, the like epilogue, they get pregnant because it's an epilogue, but she has a hard pregnancy, which like happens in the same timeline as the other book. So it's like referenced, but not like explicitly. It's just like, oh, Lola's having a hard time. So I'm like, does that need a trigger warning? Like, I'm not saying why it's hard, but I understand that can be a real trigger for people. It's like, it's just a rough pregnancy. It's not like a loss or anything like that. So I'm like, where's the line of like, because I feel like too, if you have a list of trigger warnings, people like kind of assume it's going to be like real serious. And I'm like, it's a fleeting reference.
Yeah, that's a hard balance.
Or like I just, you know, the guy punches the guy for the girl. Like, does that need a fighting warning? Because technically he punched somebody, but like we're into it, so it's fine.
But if it's violence in like a hot way, do you have to listen to the trigger warning?
If it's just one time and it's like he deserved it.
Yeah. Okay. So I've actually never read. I read the Dreamland Billionaire series, which maybe is a dark romance. Maybe I don't know if I've read like true dark romance. They put trigger warnings in those, even though like that's what you're picking it up for?
I feel like they have, because I mean, even the dark, like everyone has a line. Like there's,
I don't know, do they?
Well, okay, that's not true. Most people have a line, so it's good to know. Because I feel like honestly, because it's the more random stuff that gets people. Like if you're a dark romance reader, like certain things are like fine, but if like the dog dies, then you're out. Like you got it.
Yeah. I'm all for the choking and the bondage, but if the dog dies, I'm DNFing.
Exactly. I mean, I feel it's everyone's thing. It just like, and also I think people's tolerance changes. So that year that I read like 500 books, I could read some not dark, pretty dark regular stuff.
Yeah.
And now if I like try to read the same things, I'm like, why are you being so mean to me?
Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely get desensitized after a while.
And I
like,
definitely
you read
did.
So many books, and you're like, "Where's the dopamine hit? Where is it?"
Well, that's where I was, and then I stopped to write, so I wasn't reading as much, and so I was like, "Oh, I lost my edge." I say I'm in my soft bitch era, and I was like, "I guess I'm never leaving. This is where I live."
Are there any like dream jobs that you're dying to write?
I mean, like I said, I have literally 100 ideas, and that's not an exaggeration. I have like 105 ideas. I mean, the thing about romance is the jobs are like, they're kind of a lot of the same ones. And it's really, I think, all about time. It's funny. My husband's always, he like interrupts me and I'm like, she just got kidnapped. And he's like, why is someone always getting kidnapped? And I'm like, because the rules of a romance book don't work in a regular society. That's why you have to have like billionaires and fantasy. Like you have to suspend the rules of normalcy. So she has to be like a romance writer or a bakery owner or like something where she has time for all this foolishness.
Yeah.
Like almost as a workplace romance. She doesn't, like it's not going to happen. I mean, if you've ever looked at the timeline of 50 Shades of Grey, it's like 6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah. They get married within 3 months.
Wow.
So like, and if you think about most romance books, it's like a really condensed timeline to go from like strangers to like engaged.
Yeah.
So like
it's all insta love, actually.
Yeah, that's the thing. Was everyone's like, "Oh, I don't like insta love," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, how long do you want this to be? How many time jumps are you looking for here?"
Yeah, nobody has time for a 3-year courtship.
I don't know if I have any writing. Raven was really fun because she was an interior designer. I don't think I have any specific dream job because all my characters already have jobs and vibrate.
Yeah,
writing rock stars is fun. Lainey will be fun because she's like a celebrity stylist. I'm excited to. And I know I said I'm not like a sports girly, but I'm excited to try new sports. I have some basketball series planned. I have another series that's going to be like all minor league players of different sports.
Are you going to do a basketball player and a cheerleader?
Not in those series. I do have a whole college series idea for women's basketball after watching Caitlin Clark. And that one does have a cheerleader and a basketball player.
Love that. I feel like that's unique.
That's the thing, though. I'll have like one idea, and then all of a sudden there are like 6 ideas that go with that character's friend group. And or sibling and or whatever. I think for me, I'm more excited for tropes. Like having written a best friend's brother, I really want to write a brother's best friend. Like, I'm itching for that, like mad at his friend moment. But I don't have any plans for that. I mean, I do, but not in the next couple of books. So I have to wait.
That's for book like 97, so it's gonna have to wait.
Well, not a spoiler, but kind of a spoiler. Leo is going to have a best friend's brother in that he's the brother, but I have to write his book first before you can get to that. So
you're really just torturing yourself here.
I know, I really am. I should just like write up, but I have like a master timeline, so really throw everything off. Like certain things that like the party at the end of Broken Chords. There's a party in the epilogue or the like last scene, or maybe, and that's like a catalyst for like the other books. So like it has to happen first before other things can happen.
Yeah, you've really backed yourself into
I've backed myself into a lot of corners. That's kind of my brand. Like,
amazing.
I overplan so much that I'm really stuck and have to find ways to make Ralphie hot.
Well, hey, if anyone can do it, I believe in you.
Thank you. I try.
Do you do this full time?
No, I still work in marketing 9 to 5.
Oh my gosh.
But my husband is a big sports junkie, and we are now entering into sports season. So that's all that will be happening at my house. So I won't be neglecting him as I crank out some words. And I don't have children, so I have time. Yeah, I don't know how my friends with kids do that. I'm like, man, shook my kid in Northway 7 times. And I'm like, that sounds rough. My dog won't stop looking at me.
He barked 3 times when the delivery came, and that distracted me.
Yeah, I had to go water her. She's fine now, but good on them.
Well, Godspeed to you working full time and trying to write 100.
I mean, that's the dream for sure, but getting all those puppies out. I actually reduced my writing schedule next year by 1 book, so hopefully give myself a little more breathing room.
Yeah, we'll check back in and see how
because I'm going to some signings
to
next year, so I really have to like. I know. Then it's like people are like, "Oh, do you want to write a short story for this anthology?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Don't even let me think about it. Yes, I'll do it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for chatting with me and sharing your journey. If you want to find more of Kat's millions of books that she's got planned or things that she's got out already, you could follow her on Instagram at Kat Summers Writes. That's Kat with a K. And by signing up for her newsletter. And then you can also pre-order her upcoming novella on Amazon. Again, thank you so much, Kat. This is so much fun. I learned a lot.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to educate.
We'll see you next time.